Folks, there are no good days left for the Joe Biden campaign. Tons of news over the weekend. Before I get into today's news, I do need to tell you about an amazing deal we are doing right now at Daily Wire Plus. So all this week, Daily Wire Plus isn't just celebrating freedom. We are literally giving a year of it away. Buy 1 year of Daily Wire Plus, get 1 year for free. That's the best deal we've ever done. It means you get an additional year of the Ben Shapiro Show, uncensored, unfiltered, 100% ad-free, along with more daily shows from the most trusted voices in conservative media. Plus, we've got that on-demand access to our full library of hit movies, groundbreaking documentaries, hard-hitting series, and investigative journalism that cuts through the noise. It doesn't get any better or easier than this. Buy 1 year of Daily Wire Plus, get 1 year free. Go to dailywireplus.com right now. Get informed, get entertained. Join us as we fight the left and build the future. Okay, so as I say, Joe Biden, no good days left for him on this campaign. The only good thing that could happen to Joe Biden in this campaign is something bad happening to Donald Trump, but there is no capacity for Joe Biden to develop an independently good campaign. It's not possible anymore. Why? Because it turns out that, as always in politics, the cover-up is worse than the crime. We all knew for years that Joe Biden was in a state of mental and physical decline. We all saw it right in front of us, and we were lied to. We were lied to by everyone in the Biden family. We were lied to by everyone in the White House. We were lied to by everyone in the media. They kept telling us it was all in our head, that it was all cheap fakes, that it was all nonsense, and that Joe Biden, behind closed doors, he was doing chess preparation with Bobby Fischer, and that he was doing quadratic equations and underwater, upside down, Parcheesi with Albert Einstein. I mean, it was insane. We were told that over and over and over. And then Joe Biden went out and he shit the bed in an extraordinary way during that debate with Donald Trump in a way that no one expected, and frankly, no one has ever seen in the history of American presidential politics. So that means that all credibility is gone. In order for you to advance an argument, you have to have the credibility to advance that particular argument. Are you ever going to believe anyone in Biden land again when they say that Joe Biden is fit for the presidency? There's no possible way, especially when the DOJ, dominated by Joe Biden, is refusing to turn over the 6-hour tape of Joe Biden being interviewed by Special Prosecutor Robert Hur. They keep that tape away from you because they know that it will show the exact same thing that you saw in that debate. So that means that you're not going to believe anyone in the Biden campaign when they say that Joe Biden is fit for the presidency. Remember, the case for Joe Biden being in the presidency is not the case for him being in the presidency today, which is a shaky case as it is. It is a case for him being in the presidency in 5 years. In 5 years, when he is 86 years old. The high likelihood is he certainly will not be sentient, and he may very likely not be alive by that point. So a vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Kamala Harris, and we all know it. The media have no credibility on these issues anymore. If you thought they had not blown out their credibility over the Russiagate hoax, or over BLM, or over the 2020 COVID coverage, they've certainly blown their credibility over the most obvious lie they have ever told. Ever. And they told a lot of lies during my lifetime. They told the lie that Bill Clinton was an upright citizen who never would shtup his employees. They told us the lie, obviously, during COVID, that you had to stay in your homes ad infinitum, indefinitely, in order to protect everybody around you. They told us the lie that if you were rioting for BLM during that lockdown, that somehow the virus was non-contagious. Right? They've told lots of lies. But all of those lies remain bizarrely somewhat arguable in the public mind. The media have such extraordinary power in the American body politic that they can promote a lie, and even after the lie is debunked, they can continue to promote the lie. So, for example, when Michael Brown was shot in Ferguson, Missouri, it became perfectly obvious from both the local investigation and the federal investigation that he was shot justifiably by a cop. Today, in 2024, a decade later, Democrats will still tell you that Michael Brown was a martyr of BLM. And there's a huge percentage of the population that still believes that nonsense. In other words, just because the lie is a lie doesn't mean that the debunking of the lie takes hold in the public imagination. There are lots of cases like this. There's a good article over at the Free Press today about the murder of Matthew Shepard. You remember that case? Became the basis for the so-called Laramie Project. It was the basis for a huge push in the gay rights movement because there was a gay guy in Montana and he was killed. And the idea was that he was killed in a hate crime. And it turns out that probably not. He was probably killed in a drug deal gone bad. That thing was debunked within the first 2 years. It is still the going story about Matthew Shepard 25 years later. But there's one thing that you cannot lie about and it retain any credibility at all. And that is the thing right in front of your face. The case that is being made about Joe Biden right now is a thing we all saw, all of us. Okay, this is like lying about the sun coming out in the morning. This is like lying about the sky being blue. There's no two perspectives on this. Joe Biden has dementia. He is addled. We all saw it. That means that Joe Biden, every clip of him from here until the election that shows him doddering around, there will be a lot of them, is going to be fodder for the American body politic. And no amount of denial, no amount of it's cheap fakes, it's out of context is going to make us believe that anymore, because we all saw it live for 90 minutes. It is a full-scale disaster. It is perfectly obvious to everyone. The lies in the media just are not going to work anymore because we saw the thing. That's not going to stop the media from lying. So, for example, the cost of living in the United States is up almost 20% from when Joe Biden took office. Everybody's feeling the burden, but the media are trying to lie about that too. But here's the thing. We all know that they're lying about the thing. A recent Business Insider article keeps saying Americans are to blame for the dumpster fire economy because of our bad perception or something. Well, here's the thing. They're lying. So let me help you find ways to save money in this bad economic climate. One way to do that, switch on over to Pure Talk. If you're one of many American families looking to cut down on your monthly bills, you need to start with your cell phone service. I recommend Pure Talk because it's both affordable and reliable. Pure Talk is rapidly becoming the wireless company of choice for conservatives. Plus, it's great for families because the more lines you add, the more you save. Not to mention, Pure Talk is veteran-led. Instead of funding DEI initiatives, they fund basic services for vets who have served the country. 100% of their customer service team is located right here in the United States. If you're looking for ways to save money for your family, I highly recommend switching on over to Pure Talk. Visit puretalk.com/Shapiro to explore their offers. When you make the switch, you'll get an additional 50% off your very first month of service. Visit puretalk.com/Shapiro. Upgrade your cell phone service to America's most dependable 5G network. Save an extra 50% off your first month. puretalk.com/Shapiro today. So over the weekend, on the Twitters, tape was being passed around of Joe Biden 2019 versus Joe Biden 2024. Now, again, Joe Biden 2019 was diminished. Joe Biden 2019 was not even Joe Biden in 2015. But here is tape of Joe Biden 2019 versus Joe Biden 2024. And the contrast is absolutely astonishing.
I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
He wants to get away with, get rid of the ability of Medicare
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I oppose.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if
folks, it's right in front of your eyes. So that's the big issue. You want to know why many members of the media are acting with outsized outrage and horror today to a thing that we all knew? The answer is because they got completely pantsed by Joe Biden. They're angry at Joe Biden for pantsing them. They figured that they could maintain this lie, and Joe Biden's behavior would not fully expose the lie until it was too late for the American people to do anything about it. Everyone in Democrat land knew that Joe Biden was diminished. The entire media knew he was diminished. Everyone in the White House knew he was diminished. But they figured, okay, we can somehow pull the wool over America's eyes. We can shoot him full of whatever we shoot him full of before the State of the Union address. He'll barely get into the White House. And then if he dies, he dies. And that's the way that it goes. And then it turns out that he decided on his own to destroy both himself and them. He destroyed their credibility because now they either have to pretend to be shocked that there's gambling going on here, or they have to admit they were lying all along. Either they have to say, I never knew Joe Biden was this bad. My God, I never knew that. And that way, supposedly, we'll continue to believe them, that they were honest when they said he was fine, and now they're honest when they say he's not. Or we're going to believe the alternative, which is that they were lying the entire time. So they have to act absolutely shocked. Okay, let's start from the beginning here, because the coverage over the weekend is astonishing. The calls for Biden to leave are very real. The problem for them is there is no mechanism to replace Joe Biden on this ticket. None. Joe Biden would have to determine that he himself is stepping out. All of this fairy tale nonsense about how the delegates at the convention are simply going to vote for somebody else, despite being bound to vote for him based on state certification in the DNC, is not true. Okay, they're not going to do any of that. He would have to step out. The problem with him stepping out is the person backing him up, as we'll see, is Kamala Harris, who's even worse than he is. And the problem with it being anyone other than those two is that Biden-Harris campaign funds, which now amount to hundreds of millions of dollars, those are non-transferable. So if there's money in the Biden-Harris campaign, and let's say that neither of them ends up being the nominee, that money doesn't just shift over to Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom or Josh Shapiro or something. It just kind of sits there, doesn't have any place to go. So the fallout here is astonishing. You're getting tons of leaks from the Biden campaign, from Team Obama, which is understand something. Team Obama hates Joe Biden. They always hated Joe Biden. Barack Obama always scorned, sneered at Joe Biden, thought he was a dullard because he's right. Team Obama always thought of Joe Biden as sort of this bizarre white guy, an interloper in their administration. What is he even doing here? He's this old, doddering relic of the past. And so now they are eagerly seizing the knife to take him out. And now the leaks begin. This is when it starts to get really interesting. So you would have expected all of these leaks about Joe Biden's senility to wait until after his reelect. Nope. They are breaking now, July 1st. And we still have 4 months until the election, and they're already breaking. According to the Washington Post, President Biden's debate prep went fine. In the sessions, the president still spoke haltingly. He sometimes confused facts and figures. He tripped over words and meandered. Debate prep would not fix his stutter or make him appear any younger, aides knew. Well, I mean, that doesn't sound like it's going fine, does it? But as Biden boarded Marine One to leave the rustic Camp David presidential retreat for Atlanta, they sought to reassure anxious allies. The president, they said, was prepared and would perform well. Some said the debate might even be boring. This story, says the Washington Post, is based on conversations with 8 individuals involved in or briefed on the president's debate preparation, all of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe private meetings. The Biden campaign declined to comment. So apparently, every topic he was asked about Thursday, he had practiced answers for, including the final one about his age. So aides were bewildered by his performance. So what's happening here? The aides are attempting to get themselves off the hook. So as we're about to talk about, the Biden family, which wants Joe to remain in the race because they have to, because the grift must go on. Come rain, come shine, come snow, come sleet, the grift must go on. That's the way it works in the Biden family. See, if Joe Biden is no longer president, then Jill might actually have to be elected to something so she could be president, as opposed to right now when she gets to be president without ever having been elected to anything or having been a useful person. Hunter might actually have to get a regular job as opposed to finger painting and picking up bags of cash and snorting Parmesan cheese off the carpets. His brothers, Jim and Frank, might have to go get regular jobs where they can't just refer to their brother's governmental position in order to pick up bags of cash. His sister might have to go get an actual campaign job that doesn't involve her brother. The entire Biden family has been riding the corrupt coattails of Joe Biden since the 1970s. They might have to get regular. Of course they are pushing for him to remain in the race. So what are they doing? They're blaming the aides. What are the aides doing? They're blaming Biden. Who's the person who's actually to blame? Joe Biden, of course. And if it's not Joe Biden, it's Jill. Because if Joe is not capable of making his own decisions, then what wife in her right mind would allow her husband to go out and humiliate himself in front of billions of people? Got Lady Macbeth over here. I mean, the bizarre family dynamic inside the Biden family. The Jill Biden whispering into his ear, "Hie thee hither, that I might pour my spirits in thine ear, and chastise with the valor of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round." And Joe Biden is a historically not nice character if this is what's going on here, which it appears to be happening. So she is blaming the aides. The aides are blaming the only person responsible, who's Joe Biden. Apparently, all his aides were like, "Dude, don't debate." And Joe Biden was like, "I'm fine. Everything's good. It's all going great. I want to debate. It'll be high school." And it went great. Well, the Biden family might not be filled with very nice people, but at least Joe can get his sleep. But we can't always get our sleep because getting a good night's sleep, given what's going on in the news like right now, it's pretty rough. I've personally experienced how a bad night's sleep can wreak havoc the entire next day. Beam's Dream Powder is an all-natural nighttime drink blend that's improved 15 million nights of sleep. Thanks to Beam, my producer Savvy has been able to fall asleep faster, stay asleep, wake up energized. Really, she won't stop talking about it.
Ben, I'm going to stop you right there. Actually, she's dead asleep right now. Not a good look. She definitely didn't take it last night.
Well, okay. Then I guess I'll have to read these for her. Beam Dream Powder contains a powerful all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, epigenin, and melatonin to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. My producers love it. They should be taking it at night and not falling asleep during the day. Well, today, my listeners get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder, their science-backed healthy nighttime for sleep with no added sugar. Better sleep has never tasted better. Just mix Beam Dream into hot water or milk, stir or froth, and enjoy before bedtime. Don't waste another night battling those bedtime blues. Go and get Beam today. Your weary self will thank you. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, take advantage of 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Ben and use code Ben at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Ben with my promo code Ben for up to 40% off your order. So, according to the Washington Post, again, these are all aides who are leaking, and trying to discern the source of the leaks is really fun. Is it Kamala in the conservatory with the lead pipe? Or is it the speechwriting aide in the library with the stiletto? Aides were bewildered by his performance. Many felt they had never seen him collapse so dramatically. After all, Biden was a veteran of numerous debates. They did not understand why he gave an entirely different answer on the age question than the one they spent more than a week perfecting. The president did not just stumble over words. He appeared to lose his focus and often was unable to finish sentences. His voice was raspy and thin. When the debate concluded, First Lady Jill Biden appeared to help her husband down the stairs. Apparently, again, this whole story from the Washington Post is these aides trying to justify themselves. They say, I love this paragraph. You ready? Here we go. Some Biden officials speculated the president was over-prepared by days of lengthy prep sessions and got inside his own head. No, that's not the problem. The problem is there's nothing inside his head. Not that he got inside his own head. If he got in there, it would be an empty ballroom, like spider webs and such. Over-prepared? Did that dude look like somebody who was over-prepared to you? Have you ever over-prepared for an event? You get a little bit nervous, you kind of botch it at the beginning. Over-prepared does not look like you stumbling over your sentences to the point where no one knows what the hell you're talking about. Over-prepared. When the debate began on Thursday, Biden's top aides gathered in a hold room at the CNN studios knew immediately the president had gotten off to a rough start, stumbling on answers about the economy, ending remarks about the national debt with a gaffe. We finally beat Medicare. Early in the debate, Biden officials started telling reporters the president had a cold and a sore throat, an effort to explain why his voice sounded weak and raspy. Now again, Biden aides and allies had worried for months about whether he should take part in the traditional presidential debates. Some vigorously argued he should not participate, concerned he was not up to the task, and Trump would dominate the encounter with his shouting and bluster. Others thought skipping a debate would make Biden look weak. The Biden campaign ultimately agreed to 2 debates, insisting the event would be on their terms. So again, all the talk about how this thing was rigged against Joe Biden's team insisted on every term of the debate and an early date. Okay, so that is how this thing rolled out. And that's the least of the leaks. And then there's this leak from Axios, which is an astonishing leak. Truly an amazing leak. Biden's miscues and limitations are more familiar inside the White House. The time of day is important as to which of the 2 Bidens will appear. The 2 Bidens would be, somewhat with it, and then slack-jawed, glassy-eyed, looks as though he's about to die Biden. Quote, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Biden is dependably engaged, and many of his public events in front of the cameras are held within those hours. Outside of that time range or while traveling abroad, Biden is more likely to have verbal miscues and become fatigued, aides told Axios. Well, good news. I guess you only have to be president for 6 hours a day, like 1/4 of the time of the day. Probably none of our enemies will do anything outside the hours of 10 to 4. Probably, so long as it happens between 10 and 4, he can basically string together a sentence and spell the word cat if spotted the C and the T. But outside those hours, he's basically hitting his head on the toilet and inventing the flux capacitor, this guy. Like, he's totally out of it. This is them leaking. Their leak in an attempt to mitigate the damage is to say, well, he is sentient from 10 to 4. From 10 to 4? Okay, there's a word for this. When it comes to aging in the United States, it's called sundowning. He's full on sundowning. It hits 4:30, that dude is gone. He is out. There ain't nothing going on upstairs. That is his own aides leaking it. And why are they leaking it? Because they understand that if they don't leak this stuff, then the fire is going to come around to them. Then Biden and team are going to try and blame them for Biden's own failure. Here's the thing. That is the stupidest attempt by the Biden team ever. The problem was not his aides. The problem was him. Everyone knows it. And now you're getting the media finally reporting the stories that they wouldn't report for months. Because again, it's a cover-up. The media lied to you. They lied to everyone. They said that you were crazy if you talked about Joe Biden's dementia, the fact that he's addled. So now all the stories are suddenly breaking loose like magic. Again, understand, there's some people out there who are like, this appears so coordinated that it must be some sort of crazy plan. It's not a plan. It's everyone just got pantsed by the old senile man. That's all. Joe Biden desperately thought that he was as strong as he was back in his 30s. And so he was going to go out and he was going to debate a terrible Donald Trump blankly. And he insisted on it. And all of his aides were not strong enough to withstand the pestering of Jill and company. And so they put him on the stage with all the conditions stacked in his favor, and he crapped the bed. And the entire media were humiliated because they have been playing defense for him. They've been lying on his behalf. And now, they have to act shocked. It is a moral obligation for them to act shocked. Because if they don't, then they were complicit in the lie. Now, here's the thing. We all know they were complicit in the lie, right? We all know that they were lying for years because your eyes were not lying to you. Your ears were not lying to you. Your brain was not lying to you. They were lying to you. Okay, so now all the stories start to break. Okay, here's the Wall Street Journal. Quote, The loudest public alarm about Joe Biden's mental acuity came in February with the release of special counsel Robert Hur's report, a document he produced after spending 5 hours interviewing the president that revealed Biden displayed significant memory problems. Democrats worried. Then most of them followed the president's lead and dismissed it as partisan hackery. But here's the thing. In interviews, top officials abroad and Democrats said they have witnessed other moments when Biden's behavior concerned them. Some were quickly relieved when Biden appeared to regain his footing. Others were left shaken by the experiences. European officials had already been expressing worries in private about Biden's focus and stamina before Thursday's debate, with some senior diplomats saying they had tracked a noticeable deterioration in the president's faculties in meetings since last summer. There were real doubts about how Biden could successfully manage a second term. But one senior European diplomat said U.S. administration officials in private discussions denied there was any problem. The White House disputed the characterization that Biden has stumbled on the world stage. National Security Council spokeswoman Adrienne Watson said foreign leaders see Joe Biden up close and personal. They know who they're dealing with, how effective he has been, how important his leadership is. That's not what the foreigners are saying. According to the Wall Street Journal, diplomats described Biden's performance at the Group of Seven summit in Italy in June as mixed, with Biden appearing physically frailer than in the past, but alert in many of the most important discussions. I love that. Many of the most important discussions. You did great, Joe. Like 7 out of those 10, you were awake. Good. Well done. Ugh. Amazing work. Biden missed the summit's dinner party in a medieval castle, an off-camera and less scripted part of the summit in which leaders often exchange views more candidly. He was the only G7 leader not to attend the meal. The next day, Biden followed through on his plans to forego a Swiss peace summit on Ukraine and attend a California fundraiser instead. Top White House officials disputed any portrait of a president slipping during his European trip, which included 12-hour days chock full of meetings. He didn't miss a beat, said Dalip Singh, the Deputy National Security Advisor for International Economics. But officials said Biden's performance and focus can vary significantly between meetings, and even within a meeting. Two senior European officials cited an EU-US summit in October in Washington, at which Biden struggled to follow the discussions. Both said he stumbled over his talking points at several moments, requiring Secretary of State Antony Blinken to intervene and point out the lines he should use. Then they quote all the Biden officials denying any of that and lying. Listen, none of this is shocking. If you had to bet on whether Joe Biden was actually, awake for the G7, you'd bet no. Well, actually, you can bet on that sort of stuff at Bet Online. Bet Online gives you the option to bet on political events like the outcome of the presidential election, Trump, or whether Hunter Biden will serve jail time before 2025. Maybe. Political betting allows you to wager on real-world events outside the realm of sports. If you had Joe Biden, falling over on the stage, you probably won big the other night. Or if you're a diehard sports fan, BetOnline makes sports betting more accessible and convenient than ever before. With just a few clicks, you can place bets on your favorite teams or events from the comfort of your own home. BetOnline makes betting more accessible and convenient than ever before. With just a few clicks, you can place bets on your favorite teams or events from the comfort of your own home. BetOnline prides themselves on their higher-than-average betting limits of up to $25,000. You can increase your wagering amounts by contacting their player services desk by phone or email. So while you're watching your favorite team or the news on upcoming elections, why not spice things up with a friendly wager over at BetOnline? Go to betonline.ag to place your bets today. Use promo code BEN for a 50% instant deposit bonus of up to $1,000. That's betonline.ag. Use promo code BEN. BetOnline. The options are endless. But again, the Europeans have been seeing this for a long time. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who is not a far right-winger, he says, quote, "I was afraid of this. It was to be expected that in a direct confrontation and a debate, it would not be easy for the president. They definitely have a problem. The reactions have been unambiguous." Norbert Röttgen, senior lawmaker in Germany's center-right opposition party, says, quote, "The Democrats must switch horses now." Slovenian former Prime Minister Janez Janša said he bet months ago Biden would no longer be on the ballot in November. When Biden was in France to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day in June, he struggled. During a bilateral meeting in Paris with Zelensky, Biden spoke so softly reporters brought in to document the meeting between the two men couldn't initially hear the American president at all. Again, the White House keeps pretending that this isn't happening, but this has been known for months. And again, now you're going to get all the leaks about how they knew this for months. Meanwhile, again, his aides, his staff, they're complaining. They're trying to put it on the Biden family, which they should, because they're right. According to Axios, Joe Biden's close aides have carefully shielded him from people inside and outside the White House since the beginning of his presidency. The intermittent access has resulted in many current and former White House aides being shocked at the 81-year-old president's limitations at the debate on Thursday night. Current and former White House aides are feeling whiplash and now questioning whether Biden could fulfill a second term. Chandler West, the White House's deputy director of photography from January 2021 to May 2022, wrote, "It's time for Joe to go. I know many of the people and how the White House operates, they say he has a cold or experienced a bad night. But for weeks and months in private, they've all said what we saw last night. Joe is not as strong as he was just a couple of years ago. Okay, and that, again, is not the only person saying that. A former residence official told Axios Jill Biden was so protective of the president, and then Anthony just protects her, and they often wouldn't let us do anything for them. That'd be Joe Biden's top aide, Anthony Bernal. The separation between the family and the resident staff was so big, so divided, it's not supposed to be, and usually isn't, even in the Trump White House. So all the aides are like, it's not our fault. Not our fault. Now, here's the thing. The polling is out. It is unambiguous. The American people do not think that Joe Biden is fit to be president of the United States. Period. End of story. In June of 2024, question, YouGov, Biden, does he have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president? 35% of Americans in June 2024 said he does. 65% said he does not. Today, that number is 72%. Over 7 in 10 Americans think he does not have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president of the United States. Among registered voters, 50% said Trump does and 49% said he does not. And those would be the Democrats, right? Today, should Biden be running for president? 72%, this is all registered voters. No, should he be running for president? Among Democratic registered voters, only 54% say he should be running for president. Full-scale disaster area. Why shouldn't Biden be running for president? 86%, his age. 71%, decisions he might make in office. Now, here's the problem. 66%, his record as president. So 2/3 of Americans are like, forget about the fact he's senile. He's a terrible president. In terms of the polling on the debate itself, which candidate presented ideas clearly? Trump, 47-21. Appeared presidential? Trump, 46-28. Inspired confidence? Trump, 44-18. Explained plans and policies? Trump, 43-35. Now, the Democrats are going to point out that those are low numbers for Trump, and that's true. Who is enthusiastic about voting for Joe Biden? Are Democrats enthusiastic about voting for Joe Biden? Are they excited about voting for Joe Biden? On the economy, the same poll, registered voters. Will you be financially better off if Trump wins or if Biden wins? Trump, 45-19. On democracy and the rule of law, democracy and the rule of law will be safe. If Biden wins, 48. If Trump wins, 47. So Biden isn't even winning that one. These are disastrous numbers for Joe Biden. The polling for Biden is just absolutely awful. So, if Democrats don't want to let that sort of news in, they really need to close the curtains or perhaps get some better blinds. I recommend Blinds.com. Blinds.com has you covered with their 4th of July early access sale. Shop huge, discounts on premium, customizable window treatments. I love Blinds.com. They invented a better way to shop for energy-saving blinds, shutters, motorized options, even cooling outdoor shades, all online. Blinds.com's free design experts can help make a minor project like updating your window treatments have a major impact on your home aesthetic while keeping things easy and affordable. They'll even send you free samples. Plus, you can get unlimited window treatments installed for one low cost, 100% satisfaction guaranteed. Not only do blinds enhance the aesthetic of your home, they also offer practical benefits. Blinds can help regulate the temperature inside your home. They can potentially help reduce your energy bills. Our studio can get very hot when the sun comes glaring through the window, so we got Blinds from Blinds.com. It keeps it cool throughout these hot summer months. Join Blinds.com's over 2.5 million customers with over 25 million windows covered. Shop Blinds.com's huge 4th of July early access sale right now for sizzling summer savings up to 50% off site-wide. Get up to 50% off only for limited time at Blinds.com. Don't forget to tell them the Ben Shapiro Show sent you. That's Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply. Meanwhile, there has been a polling uptick, as you would expect, for Donald Trump, thanks to this debate. Nate Silver points out that his numbers are going the wrong direction, that there has been a somewhat small but also somewhat durable increase in the polling numbers for Donald Trump, that since the debate, Donald Trump has jumped about 2 percentage points in the polling data. The latest poll, Survey USA, has Trump up 2. The New York Times Siena poll that was taken before the debate has Trump up 4. There's a poll that just came out after the debate, and it shows Trump up 5. That is from Atlas Intel. That's Trump plus 5.2 at 45.5 to 40.3, with RFK picking up 10%. Full-scale disaster area here for the Biden campaign. So again, there's been a wide divide on the left between whether Biden should stay or whether he should go. And the only question is how close you are to Joe Biden personally. That really is what it is. If you're a member of the media, you're basically calling for him to go. If you're a member of the Democratic political establishment, you're calling for him to stay. Why? If you're a member, because now their interests actually diverge. So since 2008, when Barack Obama was elected president, Democrats and the media have basically been one giant blob. They are the same. They are indistinguishable, which is why you can have a revolving door of Jen Psaki from the White House to MSNBC, and then maybe back to the White House, and then back to MSNBC. This is how it works. It's the same. The press has just been an apparatus of the Democratic White Houses. That's all. The Democratic Party, the press, indistinguishable. But that all changed last week. Why? Because the credibility of the press was invested in Joe Biden not being the thing they all said that he wasn't, and then he was the thing. So now the press have their own interests in upholding their own veracity for having written article after article after article saying that all stories about his senility were Republicans' pound stories. So the New York Times editorial board literally called for Joe Biden not to run again. Quote, President Biden has repeatedly and rightfully described the stakes in this November's presidential election as nothing less than the future of American democracy. Biden has said he is the candidate with the best chance of taking on this threat of tyranny and defeating it. His argument rests largely on the fact that he beat Trump in 2020. That is no longer a sufficient rationale for why Mr. Biden should be the Democratic nominee this year. At Thursday's debate, the president needed to convince the American public he was equal to the formidable demands of the office he is seeking to hold for another term. Voters, however, cannot be expected to ignore what was instead plain to see. Mr. Biden is not the man he was 4 years ago. As it stands, the president is engaged in a reckless gamble. There are Democratic leaders better equipped to present clear, compelling, energetic alternatives to a second Trump presidency. There's no reason for the party to risk the stability and security of the country by forcing voters to choose between Trump's deficiencies and those of Biden. It's too big a bet to simply hope Americans will overlook or discount Mr. Biden's age and infirmity that they see with their very own eyes. If the race comes down to a choice between Trump and Biden, the sitting president would be this board's unequivocal pick. But that's how much of a danger Trump poses. Given that very danger, the stakes for the country, and the uneven abilities of Mr. Biden, the United States needs a stronger opponent to the presumptive Republican nominee. So that is the New York Times editorial board calling for Joe Biden to step out of the race. Now, here is the thing. If Joe Biden is not capable of running the race, he shouldn't be president. They should 25th Amendment that guy. If he is too senile to run, he is too senile to be president of the United States. Axios reports he is not sentient between the hours of 4 p.m. and 10 a.m., all the way around the clock. He's sentient for most of the hours my kids are in school. That is legitimately what Axios is now reporting. So the media are saying the truth, bizarrely, because again, they require the credibility of saying the truth late after lying to all of us. Here's Jonathan Karl of ABC News saying very few Democrats are pretending Joe Biden did well the other day.
Even before the debate, there was a sense of dread among many Democrats, a fear that the campaign was heading towards something they consider unthinkable, a Donald Trump victory in November. President Biden needed a strong debate to show that he has the physical and mental ability to take on and defeat Donald Trump. That's why he spent nearly a week at Camp David with an army of advisors preparing for a debate with rules and a format that his advisors designed. Few prominent Democrats are even pretending he did what he needed to do on that debate stage.
By the way, Democrats are now worried that Joe Biden is going to drag down all the Senate candidates. So one of the oddities is that Democratic candidates are outpolling Biden in nearly every swing state this year. So Sherrod Brown in Ohio, he's outpolling Biden. In Pennsylvania, Bob Casey is outpolling Biden in Pennsylvania. In Arizona, the Democratic candidate for Senate, Ruben Gallego, outpolling Biden. So Biden is actually trailing every Senate candidate for the Democrats. But the problem is that if turnout's real low for the Democrats, they lose all those seats. So they are freaking out. The Wall Street Journal reports, quote, Democrats who worried about President Biden's reelect prospects, even before his uneven debate Thursday, had been pointing to a bright spot in this year's campaign. The party's Senate candidates and some vulnerable House candidates generally poll better than the weakened president. Now, those Democratic candidates and their aides are trying to sort through whether Biden's halting performance and sometimes dazed appearance have sapped the party's goals of retaining the Senate and flipping the House. Both chambers with thin majorities are in play this fall. By the way, a report from Politico this morning that Democrats in the House are now basically begging their donors. They need the House because they're not going to win the presidency. Again, members of the press who are probably going to vote for Joe Biden no matter what, even they are appalled by what they saw, or at least pretending to be. So I will give it to, listen, Bill Maher I'm friendly with. Bill has been honest about this since the beginning, that Joe Biden is diminished and that he expected Trump to run strong. But here is Maher Listen to the audience. It's less about what Maher is saying and more about the audience. The entire Maher audience, which is a left-wing audience, I know I've been on his show many times, the entire audience is laughing at Joe Biden's performance because everyone sees the thing. Here's Maher.
You know, Joe, he famously loves trains, but apparently not of thought. It's just all night, confused and halting and trailing off. I've seen beauty pageant contestants answer questions better. I don't want to say the bad. His new Secret Service name is Amber Heard. I'm coming on.
Even the folks over at Pod Save America were very upset about all of this. So the Pod Bros at Pod Save America, those are all Obama boys. So the Obama team, they've always seen Joe as a very fragile vessel for the Obama agenda. And now they're like, God bless it. We're going to throw this guy under the bus. Here's Mehdi Hassan, Qatari frontman, and the boys at Pod Save America lamenting the fall of Joe Biden here.
I've been to Georgia. I've been to Michigan recently. Every single brown person I met, people who voted Democrat all their lives, say we're not voting Democratic. We want to punish Biden. Now, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you that is what people are saying. I dare you to ask all those people to vote again this morning after what they watched last night. It's just not the same thing. We're in a very different place. People saw the car crash in front of their eyes.
I understand that.
The biggest challenge in this race has been to capture people's attention in a very fractured media environment. There are now no more opportunities because the one opportunity when 50 million Americans tuned in, Joe Biden did not show up. The party does not have a problem with Democrats. It has a problem with Joe Biden. That's what people are trying to tell us right now.
Okay, so again, Pod Save America bros, they're saying he needs to be out. Politico has an entire article about how the mainstream media is now saying he needs to be out. And so now an open war has broken out between Team Biden and Team Obama as Politico reports, quote, Biden camp lashes out and Obama alums push back. Less than 72 hours removed from the debate performance by President Joe Biden that was widely seen as catastrophic, top members of his campaign team are lashing out at the president's Democratic critics, meeting expressions of grief, dread, and fear over the debate with mockery directed at one-time allies. And it makes perfect sense because the Obama team has always scorned the Biden team. Okay, so we've talked about all the people who want Joe Biden out. In 1 second, we're going to get to all the people, particularly inside the administration and inside some Democratic halls of power, who either want Joe Biden to stay in or have resigned themselves to their fate. We'll get to that in just one moment. First, it's time to talk some freedom. All this week, Daily Wire Plus isn't just celebrating freedom. We're literally giving away a year of it. Again, buy 1 year of Daily Wire Plus, get 1 year free. That means you get an additional year of this show, uncensored, unfiltered, 100% ad-free. You get all access when you come hang out with me on the All Access channel. You got Plus on demand. You get on-demand access to our full library of hit movies, groundbreaking documentaries, hard-hitting series, investigative journalism. It doesn't get better or easier than this. 1 year of Daily Wire Plus, get 1 year free. Head on over to dailywireplus.com right now. Okay, meanwhile, so Democratic media panic is very, very real. There's one big problem for the Democrats, many big problems. One of them is that the person backing up Joe Biden, of course, is Kamala Harris, who's even more unpopular than he is. Here is a brief montage of Kamala Harris talking about something. There's a phrase she likes to use about the limitations and possibilities, not being bound by what has been. She uses it all the time. Like when she washes her hands after going to the, I don't even know. Here we go.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. You know? What can be, unburdened by what has been.
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 What we can see, what we believe can be, unburdened by what has been.
What can be, unburdened by what has been.
It's always the same. God, she's so irritating. So that's their alternative. Good job, DEI. Glad you desperately needed to select a black woman for your vice president, so you ended up with Kamala Harris, as opposed to, like Amy. If Amy Klobuchar, by the way, were the vice president right now, this thing is done already. We're already finished. In any case, MSNBC, Joe Scarborough, attempting to maintain some semblance of journalistic credibility last week, basically threw Biden under the bus. This week, it's been a weekend, MSNBC was like, no, got to buy that one back. He's going to be the nominee, and that's awkward. So let's buy this sucker back. So Joe Scarborough is put in witness protection for this segment because, of course, he has said that Joe should drop out. And Mika did like a 15-minute segment on just what a magnificent human, bright, ingenious, witty, incisive, insightful, acidic Joe Biden is. Here we go.
The very next day in North Carolina, there was Joe Biden, back to form, finding his voice, his winning smile, the vintage sparkle back in his eyes.
Vintage
2 appearances
sparkle.
that were as different as, well, night and day.
I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what
Does that sound like Night and Day to you?
I know how to tell the truth. I know.
He's still.
I know
Wow,
right
so
from
vintage.
wrong.
Starting at 9 p.m., Joe
coffee in
Biden
his
was
head.
fresh off back-to-back trips to Europe. First to Normandy for the 80th anniversary of D-Day and a state dinner with President Macron, and then to Italy for the G7, followed by a flight across 12 time zones to L.A. for a fundraiser
12
with
time
former
zones? Holy-
President Barack Obama.
Wow, he flew in a
While we're at
plane?
it, let's talk
Whoa.
about his age. Age is wisdom and experience. That in
Age
the
is
case
wisdom
of Joe Biden leads to
and
more
dementia?
bipartisan legislation passed than any president over the past few generations, and the largest expansion of NATO's alliance in history. Under Joe Biden and his age, America is stronger economically and militarily than any time in half
Good
a
Lord, no one
century.
believes this crap. Okay,
And
fine.
while
So Mika Brzezinski is like, I'm going to massage this thing into reality. Why is that happening? Because the Biden family is making clear they ain't going nowhere. They're not going anywhere. You want to know why they're not going anywhere, by the way? They're not going anywhere because they love the power. They love it. Now, quick side note. Mika Brzezinski shows film of Joe Biden. She's like, he's totally different the next day, which he clearly is not, even from that very short clip where he's hacking into his hand and staring glassily into the teleprompter. Just to confirm that, Joe Biden put out a video talking about how he's standing for democracy. And in this particular video, there are 9 jump cuts in 38 seconds. This is a McG music video. Here is Joe Biden.
Democracy is the essence of who we are. We're the most unique nation in the world in that we're not united based on race, ethnicity, geography. We're based on idea. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all women and men are created equal. It's in our Declaration of Independence and in our Constitution. They're the 2 things that are the guardrails to make sure democracy is able to be sustained. It's all about being able to show up and vote, be able to have an opportunity to get a fair deal, get an even chance. It all rests upon our Constitution, and democracy is the vehicle and the method that holds that together.
That's how many jump cuts there were in a 38-second video. Don't worry, he's all fine, according to Mika Brzezinski. Okay, so why is all this happening? I present to you the actual president of the United States, Joe Biden, on the cover of Vogue magazine. So here is President Jill. The First Lady, Jill Biden. We will decide our future. That carries a different meaning than probably when that interview was first done. This is the August issue. We will decide our future. Here's a quote from the story. Quote, if you want to know what power feels like, try to get yourself driven around in a motorcade. Flashing police chaperone lights form a perimeter as you blaze down an empty highway, waiting cars backed up on entry ramps as you pass. It's as if the world is holding its breath for you. Also, rules don't apply. At 9 Mile, an entourage of 30 or so are noisily hustling to follow a trim blonde woman in a pristine white suit as she strides nonchalantly past clanging, gurgling brewing vats aiming for a back office. This is my first glimpse of First Lady Dr. Jill Biden exiting the sealed chamber of power into the middle of America, a vision of calm amid utter cacophony. You want to know why Joe Biden is going to stay in the race? That's the reason why he's going to stay in the race. Out, damned spot. Lady Macbeth over there. And the rest of the Biden family, corrupt as the day is long. I mean, I've been saying this for a decade at this point. God's justice comes for everyone. Joe Biden has lived an extraordinarily corrupt familial life. Super corrupt from the day that he became a senator. He was using that power on behalf of the enrichment of his family. Ben Schreckinger has an excellent book about the Biden family in which he talks, going all the way back, about the level of corruption inside the Biden family. We're talking about his brothers, Jim and Frank. We're talking about his sister, Val. We are talking about his wife, Jill. We are talking about his sons, including Hunter. The level of corruption inside the Biden family is extraordinary. The entire thing is a giant grift for their own benefit. And now, because Papa Biden ain't there, they got to prop that guy up. Because the minute he's gone, guess what happens? The gravy train is over. Hunter has to do something besides finger paint and snort blow off hookers. while impregnating them with children that his father will never visit with. Val has to get herself a real job. Frank and Jim have to get themselves real jobs. Jill goes back to being a no-name community college professor studying nonsense at the University of Delaware in Sad Sack, Wilmington. That's why he's staying in the race. Not for the good of America, not for the good of the Democratic Party. For him, for his family. That's why he's staying in the race. As you can tell, the Biden family not exactly known for its generosity to others, but you can be known that way. You can help others with Cars for Kids. A child's life is molded by his or her home, school, friends, and community. A positive experience in all those areas helps build a healthy child. Cars for Kids, that's Cars with a K, is a registered nonprofit organization that gives children the tools to succeed in life. If you have a car that's just sitting in your driveway, taking up space, you should consider donating it to Cars for Kids. If you're tired of looking at that old car in your driveway or hearing your spouse complain about it, why not let Cars for Kids take care of it for you? Here's how it works. Visit their website at carsforkids.org/Ben. Let them take it from there. The whole process only takes 2 minutes. Cars for Kids will schedule a pickup at a time that's convenient for you. If you don't have a car, you can still help. Cars for Kids accepts non-cash donations of school supplies, clothing, sports equipment, and more. We all have items sitting in closets collecting dust. Well, donate today. Make a better tomorrow for a child in need. What are you waiting for? Call now or visit carsforkids.org/Ben to get the ball rolling. That's Cars with a K and the number 4 at carsforkids.org/Ben. Again, that's carsforkids.org/Ben. So according to the New York Times, over the weekend, Joe Biden huddled up with his family, which means that they surrounded him while presumably giving him some form of dialysis. According to the New York Times, President Biden's family is urging him to stay in the race and keep fighting despite last week's disastrous debate performance, even as some members of his clan privately expressed exasperation at how he was prepared by the event by his staff. People close to the situation said on Sunday, so they're blaming the staff. Of course. So remember when I said earlier in the show that the aides are now leaking? That's the reason they're leaking, is because Jill and company are like, it was probably the staff's fault that this addled old man soils himself every night. It's the night nurse's fault. Obviously, if the bedpan is full, that's the night nurse's fault, not the guy who crapped in the bedpan. Mr. Biden huddled with his wife, children, and grandchildren, not the one, not London Roberts' kid. He still doesn't talk with her. At Camp David, while he tried to figure out how to tamp down Democratic anxiety. By the way, fun trivia fact, Camp David is named after the grandson of Dwight D. Eisenhower, who is still 6 years younger than Joe Biden. Real fact. While his relatives were acutely aware of how poorly he did against former President Trump, they argued he could still show the country he remains capable of serving for another 4 years. Mr. Biden has been soliciting ideas from advisors about how to proceed. His staff has been discussing whether he should hold a news conference or sit for interviews to defend himself and change the narrative. Nothing has been decided yet. They're never putting him in front of a camera again. They're never putting him in front of a camera again. And if they do, they're even bigger fools than they heretofore have been. One of the strongest voices imploring Biden to resist pressure to drop out was his son, Hunter, the smartest person Joe Biden knows, an addled, useless drug addict who is now in his mid-50s and now a convicted felon. That's the person who you need advising you on whether to stay in the presidency. Of course Hunter wants him to stay. If it weren't for his dad, Hunter would have been in jail 30 years ago. One of the strongest voices imploring Biden to resist pressure to drop out was his son, Hunter, whom the president has long leaned on for advice, said one of the people informed about the discussions, who, like others, spoke on condition of anonymity to share internal deliberations. Hunter Biden wants Americans to see the version of his father that he knows, scrappy and in command of the facts. Is that the version that Hunter knows? I mean, to be fair, that dude does take an awful lot of cocaine. Other family members were trying to figure out how they could be helpful. At least one of the president's grandchildren has expressed interest in getting more involved with the campaign, perhaps by talking with influencers on social media. So this is their genius plan. Their genius plan is keep dead man in race, but grandkid will talk with those weird TikTok influencers who keep coming to the White House and sashaying around in ladies' clothing while being male. One of the people informed about the situation said the entire family is united and added flatly the president was not getting out of the race and had not discussed doing so. To be fair, he has not discussed anything for the past 3 years. He's been too busy drooling into a cup. The anger among Democrats was made evident on Sunday when John Morgan, a top Democratic donor who's close to Biden's brother Frank, publicly blamed the advisors who managed the president's debate preparations, citing by name Ron Klain, Anita Dunn, and Bob Bauer. Biden has for too long been fooled by the value of Anita Dunn and her husband, Morgan wrote on social media. They need to go today. The grifting is gross. It was political malpractice. He elaborated, quote, it would be like if you took a prize fighter who's going to have a title fight and put him in a sauna for 15 hours and then said, go fight. I believe that debate is solely on Ron Klain, Bob Bauer, and Anita Dunn. So naturally, Bauer, Dunn, they're the ones who are all leaking this to the press. A couple of Democrats pointed out family members and Morgan didn't attend the preparation sessions, so they have no idea how it went. One member of Biden's circle said no one was happy with how the debate turned out, and it was human nature to look for somebody else to blame. Okay, so Biden's family is, of course, Jill leading the way, suggesting he has to stay in. And so she's treating him like a toddler. I mean, honestly, the most humiliating thing for America was not, I'm not even sure it was Joe Biden's performance. It was his wife's treatment of him after the performance, trotting him off the stage, holding his hand the way I would hold either my now 99-year-old grandmother's hand coming down from a stage or my 4-year-old, and then treating him like a 4-year-old. You answered all the questions, Joe. Honestly, what a terrible family. Truly, what a terrible family. And just the level of grift, the level of corruption. You kind of feel bad for Biden, except that he bought into it. That's the whole reason he got into this game in the first place. So Team Biden, desperate to respond, they've now issued an email, an astonishing email, to the entire campaign list. Quote, if you're like me, you're getting lots of texts or calls from folks about the state of the race after Thursday. Maybe it was your panicked aunt, your MAGA uncle, or some self-important podcasters. That'd be a reference to the Obama bros. So they're literally attacking their own political allies now. It's a tough position to be in. I thought it might be helpful to send you a few responses. Yes, the debate started rough, but voters saw what a threat Donald Trump is to the country. Actual voters perceive this debate very differently than those who pay attention to politics a lot, like everyone who's getting this email and everyone who goes on cable news. Breaking news. People think Joe Biden's old. They did coming into the debate. They do coming out of the debate. At the same time, a lot of people have rose-colored glasses about the Trump years. Flash polls from CNN, 538, Survey USA, Morning Consult, and Data for Progress show we expected the debate did not change the horse race. Sure. They say the long-term impact of debates is overstated anyway. Let us all remember, Obama lost the first debate in 2012. Bush lost in 2004. Reagan lost the first debate in 1984. Now, I will point out here that none of those debates did the President of the United States effectively die on the stage, requiring a ventilator and or the zappers in the chest just to get him back up. The day after the debate, this is again Biden's campaign sending out notes to everybody, Biden gave a fiery, defiant speech where he tackled concerns about his age head on. I don't know if you were watching, but Joe Biden left the debate stage, spoke to a rally, went to a Waffle House. Waffle House. You know what strength and perseverance it takes to go to Waffle House? You know, like every person, like who goes to Waffle House? Then he got on a plane. My God, I've never seen anyone get on a plane. Flew to Raleigh? What? To Raleigh? Like North Carolina? He flew the plane himself. No, he was just in the back. Okay, but he was on a plane. Hung out with 200 supporters on the tarmac. You mean he stood there while there were people? What the? I mean, vibrance, youth, energy. Got back on the plane. Back on the plane. Are you guys following all this? The amazing things that Joe Biden did? He left the debate stage. That's number one. Then he spoke at a rally where he read from a teleprompter. That's two. Then he went to Waffle House. Then he got on a plane, flew there, hung out on the tarmac. Then he went to bed, woke up, gave an amazing speech, got back on the plane, went to New York. Holy crap. Visited Stonewall with Elton John. What? In fact, we have tape of Elton John. This is what they're now relegated, by the way, to trotting out Robert De Niro and Elton John to do the hits for Joe Biden. I will point out at this point that Elton John is a sprightly 77 years old.
2 years ago, Jill and I had the honor to host him at the White House and bestow on him the National Humanities Medal, one of America's highest awards.
Oh my God, I can't get through the sentence.
Today, we're honored to be with him again
from a teleprompter
here at Stonewall. Please welcome Elton John.
Do we stand up for our vision and our values, or let misinformation and senseless scapegoating turn back the clock? No way.
And then Joe Biden laughing like a crazy person in the background. According to the Biden campaign, quote, the bedwetting brigade is calling for Joe Biden to drop out. The bedwetting brigade, his own allies, the bedwetting brigade. That is the best possible way for Donald Trump to win and us to lose. First of all, Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee, period. End of story. End of story. Voters voted. He won overwhelmingly. If he were to drop out, it would lead to weeks of chaos, internal food fighting, a bunch of candidates who limp into a brutal floor fight at the convention, all while Donald Trump has time to speak to American voters uncontested. All that would be in service of a nominee who'd go into a general election in the weakest possible position with $0 in their bank account. You want a highway to losing? It's that. Again, this is like the desperation reeks out of this email. 7, Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee, period. Rather than worrying about our polls, our supporters are getting on board. Wow, just so impressive. So that is an email that went out to their entire email list. The desperation. So the Democratic Party is falling right into line, of course. All the politicians are falling in. Like, they know that he's not going anywhere. So now they're all falling into line. So Jamie Harrison, the DNC chair, he says, we don't hear anybody who wants him to step down. We're not hearing anybody. In fact, we put ourselves in the cone of silence. We're hearing no one. No one is saying he should step down.
You hear the hand-wringing coming from pundits, Rev, and from op-eds like the New York Times, but you don't hear it from the people. What I've seen is a galvanization, particularly in the black community. Yeah, I'm a black man. I've seen a galvanization of support for Joe Biden because, Rev, in the black community, in your family, you can say all that you want to say about a member of your family, but don't let somebody else say it, because that's when you unify people in support. And that's what I've seen in terms of support of Joe Biden, because folks understand this, that Joe Biden has always had our back. And we're going to have his.
Okay, so Jamie Harrison there is saying that Joe Biden is like a member of black people's families. How? Just going to ask that serious question. You went from Barack Obama to that guy. Yeah? Is that how black voters are feeling? I ain't seen it in the polls. Meanwhile, James Clyburn, who's the man who made Joe Biden the president when he basically endorsed him over Bernie Sanders, he says that Joe Biden has to stay in the race. Don't you know? He captivated the audience, captivated them the next day, like magic. This guy's one of the great orators. It's like Martin Luther King at the mall. Just an unbelievable oration from Joe Biden, capturing the audience. He had them in the palm of his feeble, withered old hand. Here is James Clyburn trying to pick his way through this minefield.
He should stay in this race. He should demonstrate it going forward, his capacity to lead the country. I've been hearing from people, even the people on the floor. Yes, there were some trepidations the next morning, but only one of the people I talked to expressed an opinion that Joe Biden should drop out. Everybody else says we need to make some calibrations here going forward, and that's what we need to do. The next day, he gets to North Carolina, he's freewheeling, and he captivated the audience.
By freewheeling, he means he's reading directly from a teleprompter. Raphael Warnock, who was widely discussed as a possible replacement for Biden on the ticket should he drop out, the senator from Georgia, he says that actually this is really about Trump. Both Biden and Trump should take a cognitive exam. That's weird because Trump has offered exactly that and Biden has turned it down. Here's Warnock trying to walk his way through this one.
In the course of an election, we ought to test these men. And they ought to be out there in front of the public. We ought to see who they are. And quite frankly, the more I hear Donald Trump talking, the more nervous I become. I don't need.
So is that a yes to a
Donald
cognitive
Trump's
test?
Cognitive exam.
Is that
well,
a
listen,
yes?
I'm not a doctor. Listen, it's not something, quite frankly, I've even thought about.
Do you think President Biden should drop out of this race, Senator?
Oh, absolutely not. His entire life of public service, and over the last 4 years, he's been showing up for the American people.
No, that's the problem. He has not been showing up. He has been sleeping. He's been going to the early bird dinner at Denny's, and then he's been going home and going to sleep at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi, who herself is in her 80s, she says that Donald Trump has dementia. By the way, nothing says that our politics are in a wonderful state quite like 80-year-old people yelling at each other that they have dementia. It really is a signal to the rest of the world about our strength, vim, and vigor. Here is Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker of the House.
My people are very much Biden, Kamala Harris, and this is an opportunity for Joe Biden to go out there and show he has the stamina and the rest. And by the way, while the press, and for some reason they don't, there are healthcare professionals who think that Trump has dementia, that his connection, his thoughts do not go together.
Speaking of people who may or may not have dementia, there is your former Speaker of the House. Things are going well here in the United States of America. But here's the reality. Joe Biden ain't going anywhere. He's going to stay in the race. He's going to run this thing all the way to the end. Every time, they're going to have to hide him. That's going to be his campaign. They cannot put him on the stage. They cannot, not for any prolonged period of time without a teleprompter. There will be no long-form interviews. There will be no long-form press conferences. There will not be a second debate. They cannot afford to have Joe Biden in a position where his progressive dementia, because that's what he has, pretty obviously, where his progressive dementia is highlighted. Meanwhile, that's the thing Donald Trump actually should do. He should actually just go to sleep. If he goes to sleep, Donald Trump right now, he'll wake up president November 6th. It's that simple. Donald Trump should just pursue Joe Biden's 2020 basement strategy. At this point, the election is a referendum on Joe Biden. If it stays a referendum on Joe Biden will not be president of the United States come November 5th. Okay, meanwhile, while all of this was breaking, there was big Supreme Court news on Friday in a case called Loper versus Raimondo. So-called Chevron deference was overruled. So Chevron deference, there was a case about 40 years ago called Chevron v. Natural Resources Defense Council. And basically the rule that was established by the Supreme Court is a rule about whether administrative agencies could be the adjudicators of their own interpretation of statute. So to explain, let us say that there was a rule that was passed by Congress, and it was a vague rule for the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. The Environmental Protection Agency then proceeded to wildly reinterpret the statute and then bring you up on administrative charges, because very often if you violate a statute by the EPA, you're not brought to like a regular court for violation of it. You're brought in front of the EPA's administrative judicial panel, and then they will adjudicate whether you owe a fine or not. So people appealed that to the courts, and the Supreme Court said, well, hold on. We're not really good at interpreting like vagueness in statutes, so we're going to leave it with the experts at the EPA to determine what the statute means and then to apply the statute. Now, what this set up was a real constitutional problem, because effectively what it meant is that if Congress abdicated its legislative duty and passed a vague statute that was not clear and then passed it off to the executive branch, then these unelected administrative agencies would have the power to effectively write stuff in the blanks of the statute, apply the statute judicially, and then enforce it with the executive branch. So you essentially had a dictatorship of the administrators. That's what Chevron set up. Effectively speaking, what it set up was a unified legislative, judicial, and executive branch all inside an unelected body of administrative officials. And the standard under Chevron deference was that the judiciary would not sign into chat unless the administrative agency was so wildly unreasonable in its interpretation of its own authority and statute that the courts would have to step in. That was the rule. Was that basically court deference, the courts were going to be deferential toward administrative agency in their interpretation of vague statutes, so long as those interpretations were reasonable. So, on Friday, that was overruled by the Supreme Court in a 6-3 decision. Held, the Administrative Procedure Act requires courts to exercise their independent judgment in deciding whether an agency has acted within its statutory authority. Courts may not defer to an agency interpretation of the law simply because a statute is ambiguous. Chevron is overruled. Article 3 of the Constitution assigns to the federal judiciary the responsibility and power to adjudicate cases and controversies, concrete disputes with consequences for the parties involved. The framers appreciated the laws judges would necessarily apply in resolving these disputes would not always be clear, but envisioned the final interpretation of the laws would be the proper and peculiar province of the courts. In other words, not a fourth independent branch of government. The court recognized exercising independent judgment often included according due respect to executive branch interpretations of federal statutes. But that quickly started to turn into unending authority for these various administrative agencies. And so the idea here is that Chevron didn't do its job. Originally, Chevron was designed in order to allow for executive agencies to make statutes more comprehensible and more consistent. And instead, what happened is that every 4 years, the interpretation of the statutes would change. Whenever the president would be appointed, whenever he'd be elected, he would appoint a new administrator at the EPA, and the administrator would just flip the interpretation of the statute, which is not the way that statutes are supposed to work. So what is this actually going to do? What's the practical effect? It forces back to Congress specificity in legislation, which is a good thing. The administrative branch of government is not part of the constitutional structure. It was not part of the original constitutional structure. It was a creation of the Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson progressives in the early 20th century. It is foreign to the constitutional bargain made by the founders. It was then given outsized authority on the idea that experts were the best placed in order to both make law, judge law, and then implement law. And all of that was false. And so the judiciary, this is being treated as a judicial usurpation, like the judiciary is inserting itself where it doesn't belong. No, the judiciary is saying, no, you understand, it's our role to interpret statutes. It's your role as the executive branch to administrate statutes. And it is the legislative branch's job to define the statute. And if they do a piss poor job, we're going to be the one to interpret it. That is correct. That is correct. And again, the reason that is correct is because, as the Supreme Court says, Chevron's presumption is misguided because agencies have no special competence in resolving statutory ambiguities. Courts do. The framers anticipated courts would often confront statutory ambiguities and expected that courts would resolve them by exercising independent legal judgment. Chevron gravely erred in concluding the inquiry is fundamentally different just because an administrative interpretation is in play. The very point of the traditional tools of statutory construction is to resolve statutory ambiguities. In other words, administrative agencies always have an interest in expanding their own power and interpreting statutes in a way that they find friendly. The judges are supposed to not have that same sort of issue. So creating an independent branch of government, in other words, is wrong. Now, again, in reality, the Chevron ruling has been more observed in the breach than in reality. For like the last 10 years, nobody has cited Chevron deference because the courts have basically not applied it. This was just kind of the last step of putting a stake through the heart of Chevron. The Supreme Court says Chevron is unworkable. The defining feature of its framework is the identification of statutory ambiguity, but the concept of ambiguity has always evaded meaningful definition. Such an impressionistic and malleable concept cannot stand as an everyday test for allocating interpretive authority between courts and agencies. This, of course, is exactly correct. The left is freaking out about this because what they actually want is an unappointed government, a deep state, you might say, that actually sits there and interprets laws in ways that the left likes. Permanent employees of the executive branch and the administrative agencies who rule your life. And the Supreme Court now says, nope. If they judge wrong about what a statute means, I can now sue in federal court, and no longer will there be this deference to the administrative agency's interpretation of the statutes. That was one big ruling. The other big ruling that happened on Friday was the Supreme Court raising the bar for obstruction charges against both Donald Trump and January 6th offenders. As Reuters reports, the justices ruled 6-3 to throw out a lower court's decision that had allowed a charge of corruptly obstructing an official proceeding against defendant Joseph Fisher, a former police officer. Typically, a charge of corruptly obstructing an official proceeding, it means that you have to impair the availability or integrity of documents or other records related to an official proceeding, right? When you're obstructing, it means you're destroying documents, or it means you're hiding documents, or not talking to the cops, or something like that, in a way that, you don't have an excuse for. This is a weird decision only because Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson actually joined the conservatives. And meanwhile, Justice Amy Coney Barrett joined the liberals in this particular ruling. She wrote a dissent joined by Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. So that's a potential boost just because these obstruction charges, as we talked about at the time, are way too broad. Obstruction was never meant to apply to there's a riot. It's weird to apply obstruction to a riot. It's a very strange thing to do. So again, another good ruling by the Supreme Court. There are a couple more that are coming down today, which I'm sure we'll discuss tomorrow on the show. Meanwhile, in a final bit of news, the so-called far right is kicking butt in France. They're not far right anymore. You can't be far right when you're winning 34% of the vote in French parliamentary elections. You're just called the right. Macron certainly is not the right in France. Marine Le Pen's national rally, according to the Wall Street Journal, notched a victory in the first round of parliamentary elections across France on Sunday, moving her party one step closer to its goal of winning control of the National Assembly and taking the reins of the government. Emmanuel Macron's pro-business party and its allies finished third with 21%. The Commies, the New Popular Front, got 28%. So basically, you now have in France, 1/3 of the public is so-called far right. By far right, by the way, they don't mean economically right-wing. Far right just means they don't like vast swaths of Muslim immigrants arriving and destroying the social integrity of France. It also means they don't like far-left social policies. That's kind of what the far right, the quote-unquote far right stands for. Oddly enough, they are the pro-Israel party. So this sort of attempt to paint them as anti-Semitic, weird, because they're the pro-Israel party. Meanwhile, the far left hates Israel. They're out in the streets celebrating by the tens of thousands with red flags, which, of course, if you're a normie in France, that's not particularly assuaging of your thoughts and fears. So 33% to National Rally, 28% to the Commies, 21% to Emmanuel Macron's party. If National Rally wins a majority in the National Assembly, Macron would face the possibility of sharing power with the first, quote, far-right government since Vichy France. Macron's presidential term ends in 2027. He said he's not going to resign. So apparently, Le Pen and her allies are within striking distance of a 289-seat majority in the National Assembly. That would compel Macron to select a prime minister from Le Pen's ranks. The person who's most likely to be that is a 28-year-old named Jordan Bardella. He has talked about the evils of what he calls Macronism. He's placed immigration and the rising cost of living at the center of his campaign. If they do not reach that majority, then you could see Macron side with the communists, which is insane, which would show you where the center is in France. The center is more friendly to the communists than they are to sort of a traditional right-wing party that doesn't like mass immigration. Apparently, National Rally is estimated to win between 255 and 295 seats. The communists were expected to win between 120 and 140 seats. Macron and his allies would win 90 to 125 seats. So there's a political realignment. And by the way, if Macron sides with the communists, the next election after that is going to be a heavy swamp for the right. The right will kick butt in that election, as well they should, because again, France has been run directly into a ditch by people who believe that open immigration and multiculturalism is an actual way to preserve a country, which it clearly is not. Joining us on the line is Bernie Moreno, Colombian-American businessman and the 2024 Republican senatorial candidate for Ohio. He is challenging the incumbent Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown. Bernie, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. I'm going to see if I could only be the guest that speaks faster than you do, so we can have that in common.
Sounds great. So let's talk about your race. Obviously, the Senate rests on a razor's edge right now. Your race is incredibly important. Ohio is a state that President Trump is expected to win running away. Sherrod Brown is, however, a tough candidate. He's had multiple terms in the Senate. So what is the biggest falsehood that people seem to believe about Sherrod Brown that you're trying to debunk in this campaign?
That he's inevitable, that he's somebody that is a moderate, that he's bipartisan, that he works across party lines. As you know, he's one of the most radical senators in office today. This guy ran for office for the first time after graduating from Yale with a major in Russian studies, just after we had landed on the moon. So this is a guy who's just been around way too long. He's a forever politician. He's not on the side of workers. That's his entire branding. The reality is we've lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs under his watch. His policies are the exact reasons why we've lost those manufacturing jobs. High taxes, high regulation, a tax on energy. We're going to point that out, and that's how we're going to win this race.
So there has been very little polling data actually in Ohio on the Senate race. The last poll that I've seen is a Marist poll that was almost a month ago at this point. Even in that poll, you were certainly within striking distance. The margin of error is like 4 points. He was ahead 5. So what is the internal polling showing you right now, especially given the fact that, I know it's fresh, but Joe Biden absolutely collapsed on the stage the other night. That's got to be dragging down Democratic turnout numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the reality is when you have an opponent, Sherrod Brown, who votes almost 100% of the time with Joe Biden, we're going to tie those two together. The reality is in the polling, Ben, what it shows is that about 40% of Ohio has no idea who I am. So we are down about even 15 or 16 points with Republicans. So all we have to do is point out, here's what I stand for: energy dominance, a safe and secure border, support of our allies like Israel, peace and stability around the world. This guy is the exact opposite. He's the senator of high prices and open borders. Once we do that and we make that contrast, I'm confident we're going to retire one more forever politician. We don't need any more of these guys down in Washington, D.C.
So obviously, you're a longtime business person. You've seen how the government has impacted businesses in the state of Ohio. You've mentioned Sherrod Brown's policies, his open immigration policies, his subsidization for things like electric car schemes. Now, talk a little bit about what your industrial policy would look like versus Sherrod Brown's industrial policy.
Well, let's talk about EVs first, because as you know, I was in the retail automotive business. I started with one dealership, built a group of 15 dealerships representing 30 brands. I understand one very simple thing. Consumers are the ones that dictate the pace of innovation, the direction of innovation. It's their vote with their pocketbook that is infinitely more important than some bureaucrat, some unqualified bureaucrats vote in Washington, D.C. We have to get rid of all these mandates, get rid of the incentives, stop allowing California to dictate emission standards for the entire country, and let the marketplace be free. That's number one. Number two is we have to be an energy dominant country. We have to be the preeminent source of coal, natural gas, oil, nuclear around the world. And by the way, for the climate cultists out there, that's actually better for the planet because we make energy cleaner, safer, and better here in America than anywhere else on earth. And third, regulations. Regulations are absolutely choking businesses, any kind of business. We have to make sure we have appropriate guardrails that let businesses invest and thrive.
So, Bernie, when you take a look at the Biden foreign policy that is backed by Sherrod Brown, I've not seen a worse foreign policy from a president in my lifetime. Obviously, the Democratic Senate has been backing him pretty much every step of the way. What would you be doing with foreign policy that is different than how Sherrod Brown has been voting?
Well, Sherrod Brown is, just like Joe Biden, willing to turn their backs on Israel for political reasons. That's what's sick about this. They know that Israel should be bipartisan. They know it's our strongest, most important ally in the Middle East. They know that Israel's fighting the war that we would otherwise have to fight, and that the money we give Israel is actually an investment in research and development. They make our weaponry better. So that relationship should be airtight, but because of Michigan and Minnesota, they're willing to absolutely kneecap Israel. We have to provide unequivocal support. The enemies of Israel are looking for that air between America and Israel. We can never let that happen. Sherrod Brown is on the side of the terrorist supporters, the people who want to see Israel destroyed. It's disgusting. It's gross. And we're going to make sure we point that out as well.
And folks, it's one of the most important Senate races in the country. It's not just that Bernie Moreno has to beat Sherrod Brown. It's that if Bernie Moreno does not beat Sherrod Brown, then you're going to get a continuation, quite possibly, of Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, which is a complete nightmare. Head on over to his campaign website if you want to give, BernieMoreno.com. Again, that's BernieMoreno.com. Bernie, thanks for running. Thanks for what you're doing. Good luck in the race.
Thank you, Ben.
All right, guys, coming up, the world is reacting to the fact that we don't have a president at the top of our government. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.